Well, good afternoon and welcome back to Storytime as we finish up our book, How's Inky by Sam Campbell. Welcome back. Hope you've been enjoying the story this week. Chapter 7. Friendliness, we find it as we give it. Now came that marvelous blanket of snow to the North Country, like a great white silence spread to deepen the hush and peace. One who has not seen it cannot picture in imagination its clean, sparkling beauty. In the sunlight, it seems as if nature had gathered the leftover sparkles of all the diamonds in the world and cast them about here. Lakes are so thickly frozen they would bear up a railroad train, and on still nights this ice cracks of its own weight, at times sounding like the booming of a cannon. But this seasonal loveliness we had to see through our memories that year, for we were many, many miles away. We heard of Inky several times while the winter was yet young. Friends living in the north visited the sanctuary and found him there, fat, healthy, and happy. He was making good use of the shelter and food provided him. During those first days, there was evidence of the two raccoons, also their tracks mingling in the snow with those of Inky. But the tracks of rack and ruin disappeared in later days, as the ever-deepening cold rocked them into a sound sleep and kept them there. Then came a period of a few weeks when we were entirely out of touch with our sanctuary. Our lecture schedule was very intense, and Bobby and I traveled constantly, telling listening audiences of our little friends of the forest. It was good to see how people everywhere loved the simple little creatures. The pictures we had made and which illustrated the lectures could in no way appeal to the highly developed love of excitement prevalent today. Wide has spread the notion that wild animals are a threat to the life of anyone who enters forest or jungle. In this belief, many have come to expect the half-painful thrill of charging bears, lions, and tigers, where the subject primitive nature is pictured. But the hairbreadth escapes associated with nature are all in our imaginations. Life in nature is simple and calm. So far as man is concerned, there is little danger, really none if he uses common sense. Our lecture message was of the real goodness and friendliness we found in the forest. We had photographed no bloodthirsty wolf packs plotting the destruction of woods travelers, for we had never seen any. In truth, neither has anyone else. Now let me say this plainly. In all the years I have lived in the forest, in constant contact with animals of all kinds native to the North Country, I have never seen one creature make a move to attack me. Wolves, coyotes, wildcats, lynx, pumas. At some time or other I have been very close to them all. Yet I have seen them do but one thing: run away in the quickest possible manner. Once, when we were camped on a remote lake, I was picking blackberries in a large patch we had discovered. The bushes were unusually tall and heavy, so that it was difficult to see ahead as I worked through them. One bush was holding its best berries high in the air. I took hold of it and bent it over so I could pick them, and got the surprise of my life. There stood a great black bear, so close I could have touched him had I wanted to. I didn't want to. He was too close. Well, I knew the bear would not hurt me. For the moment I wondered if he knew it. There is a rule to follow in dealing intimately with animals. Make no sudden move. Give them no cause to think you are attacking them, for they will fight furiously in self-defense. Hence I froze in my position when I saw the bear. Blackberry briars were pricking my fingers, but I must not move. Mosquitoes were having a grand free meal on the back of my neck and on my nose, but I must not move. A deer fly was circling about my head, and a bee zoomed past my ear, but I must not move. The bear froze in his position too, and it was a case of who would thaw out first. Then things happened that made me feel I was just a little better at this game than the bear. The bee, which had just failed to get a rise out of me, went over to the bear and circled his great black head. He swatted at the bee with his paw. The bee kept at him. Possibly that bear had raided that bee's home recently and taken the stores of honey, as bears often do. The bee circled again, and the bear swatted again. Perhaps it was because the bee was too close to the bear's eyes that he was striking at it, for bears are not concerned about little things like bee stings. When bears are raiding hives, bees swarm all over them, and they show not the slightest concern. In fact, they eat bees. One old trapper insists that the sting of the bees has the same effect on bears as pepper has on us. It is a sort of seasoning. Nevertheless, that bear in the blackberry patch didn't like that bee near his eyes. It looked so funny to see that great creature striking so awkwardly at such a little insect I could not keep from laughing. "Why, you big sissy, you," I said aloud. At the sound of my voice, the bear showed new concern about me. He seemed astonished to discover that I was alive and bent his head from side to side as if trying to get a better look at me. On his face was an expression of mixed surprise, bewilderment, and concern. Then, with a great whoosh blowing of his breath in my face, he whirled around and raced away, clearing a path through the blackberry bushes as he went. I had enjoyed the experience, though I was quite thankful that it was over. Nevertheless, it showed again the attitude common to wild animals on meeting man: to escape, not to attack. Surely there is a certain caution in creatures which makes them shy at the presence of man, makes them evade him, stay out of his sight, but not attack him. That is what we see when we first approach nature. The living things are avoiding us, for they distrust us after the ages of savage abuse they have suffered from our traps and our weapons. But there is also deep in the creature's natures that sacred friendliness which is revealed when we approach them with kindliness, consideration, and understanding. It is this quality of friendliness that we uncovered in Inky, Rack, and Ruin, Sausage, and Babette. We befriended them, and that released a friendship which already must have been in their hearts. They were not tame, but they were normal animals living naturally in their woods, meeting their problems as do others of their species. But they had received friendship from us, and they paid us back in kind. Thus it is demonstrated again that like begets like. And it was this tender quality of friendliness which we found in nature that Babette and I took to public in pictures and lectures. How grand it was to see that people everywhere accepted with gratitude our unexciting but wholly honest presentation of the world of nature. We found it raised our own faith in the human race to see this. Before every manner of group in all parts of America, we took our simple message from the sanctuary. And that which gratified us most was to see that people were not amazed or incredulous at what they saw. They were pleased, happy as they saw the friendliness that is in little wild things, but they were not astonished. Why? Let me answer that question carefully, for I consider it most revealing and important. The answer is because within our human hearts we know instinctively that this world and life are of the highest order. We never cease to be astonished at the appearance of evil, for something within us accepts only good. Friendship is what we actually anticipate in nature. Deep in our thoughts we do not truly believe that nature is savage. Hence, when we hear stories such as a lion cub playing with a lamb, a wolf caring for a baby, a cat and a bird in friendship, a fish that will come when called, we are highly gratified. Such true stories are numerous, and we find they prove to us something we already know. We feel that it is the way things really are, even though we are afraid something may hinder and alter this natural order. It is with our love that we see things truly, discerning actual natures. Our fears show us a sort of false world wherein we live a false state of existence. With our love we see the real character of Inky and the other orphans. There is presented the type of nature we instinctively expect. With our fears we see the fictional ferocity of animals, charging, attacking, rending, destroying. But our love sees reality. Therefore, when we see revealed the natural friendship of animals, we say, that is the way we have always thought it to be. That is the world that God made. Look to the young child before our faulty education and fear has spoiled him. Everything that lives he expects to be friendly. He will reach out his little hand to the wild bird and wonder why it does not perch there and sing to him. By instinct, the child expects harmony, goodness, and friendliness to fill the world about him. It is this same instinct that makes our audiences grateful to find demonstrated the goodness, friendliness, and gentleness of our 5 fur-covered orphans. And this shows clearly that by nature we are friendly. Friendliness is in our blood, in our very constitutions, in our hopes and faith. The wars and meanness we experience arise not from our natural better selves, but from our fears. It is not too much to hope that some day, ere long, we may live by our deepest nature, and know the happiness which it is possible for us to have in that way only. Once, during the winter, we found time available for a quick trip to the sanctuary. We snowshoed over the silent frozen lakes and over drifts of glistening white snow, seeking news of our pets and a glimpse of the place we love so deeply. How we enjoyed that adventure, the musical swish of snowshoes as they sent sprays of frozen particles ahead of each step, the exhilarating cold that kept nipping playfully at our cheeks and fingers, the sharp shadows of shoreline trees cast by a slanting sun, the blue sky overhead, the cry of blue jays, the dainty voices of chickadees, and flocks of goldfinches with their amazingly brilliant plumage, the rich solitude that reached from horizon to horizon. All things combined to show us a fact we have known for years, that though winter is not the greatest of seasons, There is no season greater. But we did not find Inky. Not even one of his tracks could we discover. There was still quite a little food present, and we replenished the stock with some we had brought in pack-sacks. But Inky was not around. We called and looked in all his favorite haunts, but he was not there. No doubt he had searched out a place more suited to the season, a place which remained his secret. Despairing of finding our pet, our thoughts turned to food. We were so hungry that Inky's food might have been appropriated had we not brought our own with us. During the preparation of the meal, we repeated a mistake made once in the past. We built the fire in the cabin fireplace and set out various food thereon to fry or boil. We had forgotten that the fireplace chimney would be packed with snow. As soon as the heat of the fire rose, it loosened the snow which fell down in our skillets and kettles, flooding them and putting out the fire. That caused a delay which was serious but not beyond remedy. Soon the mess was cleared away, the fire rekindled with dry wood, and dinner under way again. I wonder if food ever before tasted so good. It made no difference if there were ashes in it, if some parts were cooked too much and the rest too little. Bobby said no king ever dined as well as we, for no king ever got that hungry. The sun had set when we started away from the sanctuary, but a full moon was mounting in the sky, and in the clearness of the air and the reflection from the snow, its light seemed almost equal to that of the sun. As we snowshoed through groves of birch trees, the effect was truly magical. Bobby said he felt as if we some way had slipped into another world where there was beauty unknown to Earth. We had been disappointed at not having seen Inky, but with all the beauty and wholesome joy we had experienced on that brief winter sojourn, we felt that our lives were much enriched. It was spring when next we saw the sanctuary, and we came quivering with excitement. How many of our little friends would be there? How many would remember us? As we approached, the judge, who had joined us again, improvised a verse to his song, just to start the season right. Oh, now I see a birch tree, and a balsam and a pine, and now I see a cabin, where we three will sleep and dine. We've traveled north, we've traveled south, we've traveled east and west, and here we are back home again, the spot that we love the best. We had not long to wonder about certain of our little friends. We had just landed from the boat and were unloading our baggage when two chipmunks came running toward us as if they were having a race. Without the slightest hesitation, they climbed up on outstretched hands and partook of the peanuts we offered them. Within a few moments, a red squirrel and a blue jay had come close enough to show they remembered us. But no Inky. We called for him repeatedly as we went about the task of setting the cabin in order. We walked through the forest, imitating his honking, very poorly no doubt, but still there was no response. All during the evening we kept hoping he would return, and just before we went to bed we took one last look about the cabin, still calling him. But no Inky. The first gray tones of dawn were in the sky the next morning when Bobby awakened the judge and me with a happy shout. "Wake up, you fellers, and listen," he called, hardly able to control himself. We listened. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Something was at the screen door. No need for us to question who it was. We all knew that sound too well. I believe the three of us must have jumped out of bed at the same instant. There was just as much confusion and excitement as that day when Babette first arrived. Out to the door we went together and found just what we had expected. There was Inky in his same old awkward position, reaching above his head and scratching for admittance. I doubt that any animal ever received a greater welcome than did that porcupine. All three of us shook hands or feet with him at once, leaving him only one foot to stand on. We offered him cookies, cake, whole wheat bread, apples, all at the same time. But he was as excited as we were and wanted no food. Once inside the cabin, he raced from one familiar spot to another. In most obvious happiness, he honked and honked. He grabbed Bobby by the leg, but Bobby offered no objection, just saying, "Go on, Inky. Please bite hard so I'll know it's really you." Then Inky acted tough. He whirled and whirled and whirled, all quills standing on end, and his tail lashed back and forth most violently. I believe he reached a new high in toughness. The three of us laughed at him until our sides ached. Next, he began chasing us. We led him out into the forest, where he ran up and down, back and forth, until he was so exhausted, he simply dropped to the ground and stayed there breathing heavily. I have always been impressed by the way animals show happiness. No one who has watched a dog, when his master has come home or something else has pleased him greatly, tuck his tail between his legs and race aimlessly about, can doubt the ability of these creatures to be wonderfully joyful. I have seen cats in positive ecstasy at the return of someone much loved, and birds that were no less expressive. But never have I looked upon another such display of happiness as that of our porcupine. And Inky did not quickly lose his enthusiasm either. Later in the day he did something I would not have believed of a porcupine if I had not seen it. He had been resting for a while after his strenuous time when we decided to walk back to Little Vanishing Lake, a tiny lake about 1/2 mile from the cabin. The trailing arbutus was in bloom, and we planned to take a picture of it. Imagine our surprise when we were several hundred yards down the trail to hear behind us, honk, 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 honk. There was Inky, his little legs fairly flying to catch up with us. We paused and greeted him. Then as we went on, he followed at our heels, after the manner of a dog. All the way to Vanishing Lake he went. And that was a long journey for such an animal. In fact, doing such a thing was contrary to all the instincts of his kind. Porcupines are not travelers. Their legs are built for climbing trees. Generally, one will live his entire life within a very few acres of ground. Then why did Inky break all the rules and regulations of his forest people to go along with us on that long hike? Was it for food? No, that would be a misinterpretation of his motive. He had not been fed by a human hand for 6 months when this remarkable thing occurred. Furthermore, he was passing his natural food every foot of the way out to the lake. There was one reason, and one only, that this interesting little creature should do this. He did not want his human friends to get away from him again. It was companionship, friendship that he wanted. He sat patiently waiting while we took pictures of the arbutus. Probably he thought we were wasting our time, but he said nothing about it. Then, as we started home, he followed once more, honking forth his happiness, staying as close to our heels as his little legs would let him. He kept up the pace until he was so tired he staggered, and finally lay down under a bush and would go no further. We picked him up and carried him back to the sanctuary. Once there, he climbed up his favorite birch tree, to the first branch only, and slept for the rest of the day. Now there is a story of wilderness friendship that should lead us to a new appreciation of the world in which we live. In a simple porcupine, a creature that some nature students erroneously call stupid, this precious quality is found. Not only did Inky form a friendship when conditions were right and trouble-free, but he retained memory of his friends over a long period of time. If he had had some of the frailty we too often permit to enter our human friendship, he might have been very resentful. He might have felt hurt that we had left him alone for those long cold months, but he did not. Only one thing mattered: we were back again. He asked nothing more. But other pleasantries were awaiting us. Several nights later we heard a noise on the back porch, and went with our flashlights to investigate. There was Ruin with her 5 raccoon babies, but her return was not quite as complete as that of Inky. Perhaps it was out of fear for her young ones that she held aloof from us. She would come and take bread from our hands, but she would not permit her young ones to do it, nor would she permit us to pet her. However, it was enough that she had returned, and we enjoyed her none the less because we could not pick her up. Rack, always the more shy of the two, was not seen for some days after Ruin first returned, and then he was only viewed from a distance, apparently having lost his desire for human companionship. He was such a magnificent creature, though we drew our joy just out of seeing him occasionally. Then Sausage came back. She too had a family to care for, and would not give us a full measure of friendship. But she would come to us for food, and in case she did not receive it, would climb all over the screen door until a few cookies would bribe her to stop the racket. Babette alone of our orphans failed to return. Doubtless she was one of the fine, beautiful deer we saw back at her valley home, but there was no way to distinguish her. Though we no longer had her close friendship, still all her kind seemed closer to us. By knowing one deer well, we understood all deer better. Maybe that is the real gift of friendship. As the final paragraphs of this chapter are written, the second summer in the reign of Inky the porcupine is half gone. His bequilled majesty is sitting head in a corner, dozing peacefully. But the Sabbath calm may be broken at any moment, for each day has increased his love of mischief, and his talent for it too. Bobby is back at the cabin arranging a midnight meal for the raccoons, and Sausage is sitting close by sampling everything Bobby puts down. Near at hand, awaiting his attention, are a young red fox and a young coyote, recently sent us by someone who explains that these two have been orphaned by a tragedy. Would we take them in, care for them, and raise them? Would we? Long ago we answered that question for all time. We will take in any wild creature from a mouse to a mastodon. The newcomers are most welcome, and we shall do our best to give them a good start in the world. Who knows, maybe they will be as delightfully troublesome as Inky. And maybe, someday, another book should be written to tell of their growth, intelligence, and peculiarities. Judge Norton has been working at another verse for his song, and I have no doubt I shall hear it shortly. Now Inky stirs and comes over to me. I cringe in anticipation as he comes close to one leg, expecting him to fasten on in his annoying way. But he does not. He is not in the mood for frivolity. Instead, he climbs up on my lap and then onto the typewriter, inspecting critically the last few typewritten lines. Apparently there is nothing of interest, for he turns around and sits down on the roller, looking at me squarely in the face. What a big help that is, hence these lines are being written first in longhand, as the typewriter is now useless. But Inky is in a serious mood. He seems to want to tell me something, and I believe I could guess what it would be. Sammy, old boy, he looks as if he would say, you and I have had a wonderful friendship. We are having it right now. Don't think for a minute I don't appreciate it. I bite you on the leg and I chew up anything of yours I can get. But I don't need to tell you that even in that way I'm saying how much you mean to me. Your human people and my porky people seem to be a long way apart, and yet, in truth, I guess we are all the same. The real things are with us animals just as they are with you. Friendship is one of those real things. Now you and I have shown the world something about friendship. We have shown there's no limit to it, that any two things that know life can be friends. Friendship is the greatest thing in the world, Inky, I said, stroking his quills, very carefully, the right way. Nope, he said, I can't agree with you there. Life is the greatest thing. It is one grand thing just to be alive, but friendship is part of life, and life wouldn't be much without it. Now, if a fellow hasn't any friends, I figure it's his own fault. To have friends, you have to start being one inside yourself. Look at that grouchy old porcupine I meet sometimes back in the woods. I can't get a smile out of him. All he thinks of is himself, and if he says anything about anyone else, it's something mean. Why, he hasn't a friend in the whole forest. Yes, sir, if you want a friend, you have to be a friend. And if you are so blamed busy thinking about yourself that you can't enjoy the others around you and don't like to do things for them, then someday you're going to be pretty lonesome. Inky turned around and bit a few pieces out of the paper in the typewriter. Writing a book, aren't you, he said. Wish I could write one for your folks. Why, Inky, what would you write? Oh, a lot of things, but mostly just what we've been talking. I think a lot of you human beings have the wrong notion about friendship. Either you think it's owning somebody or you think you're always trading. If someone does something for you, you have to do something for him. Or else you lean on friends. Now, maybe you can get this in your book some way. Out there is that forest of trees. Just look at them. Can you imagine any finer friendship than you see there? Each one is helping the other some way, giving out moisture, dropping leaves to make good soil, reflecting sunlight and storing up rain. Trees don't grow so well alone, you know, but look at them now. Do you see any one of them leaning on the other except where some kind of accident has happened? In their natural order, they are all growing up, growing toward the light. Each one is doing his own growing, and because each one is doing his own growing, the trees can stand side by side the best of friends. Being friends isn't the first object in their lives. Living and growing and being the best trees that they can be is the first object. And then this wonderful companionship is the result. Do you see what I mean? It is the same way with you folks. In the best book you human beings ever printed, it says, Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. That is the law you live under, to grow, to seek light, to evolve for yourselves the finest characters you can, just as trees do. And then you find yourself surrounded by fine companions and friends who are all doing the same thing. Friendship for everything and everyone just naturally follows when you live right toward God. Right, Inky. And I promised him I would try to get his idea into my book some way. But now George Norton interrupted our imagined conversation. Say, you two, quit sitting there just looking at each other and listen to this. The judge's foot started to beat time, and I had never heard it beat harder. He was mighty well satisfied with his new verse, and he had reason to be. Oh, folks sure have a lot of wars. They're fighting fools and how. If that's the milk of kindness, then I'll take mine from a cow. Let's learn in the beginning what we must learn in the end, to stop our foolish hating and learn how to be a friend. Thank you for joining us this week for Storytime. That was How's Inky. Next week, we'll continue with the next book in Sam Campbell's Wildlife series. Hope you had a wonderful week. Have a wonderful weekend, and God bless. Goodbye.